are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And for all right, and we are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And for the final.
Keep yourself in the loop of everything football on the Golden State Media Concepts Football Podcast. The latest news on and off the field, be it college football, Big Ten, SEC, Big 12, Pac-12, ACC to the NFL. We've got you covered. Listen to the Golden State Media Concepts Football Podcast.
And welcome everybody to another edition of the GSMC Football Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. As always, I'm your host, Kenneth Gruenfelder, and it's great to have everybody here on this Tuesday, January 16th. We have a lot to talk about on the show today, but before I get into that, I just want to remind you guys, as always, to tip or donate and get your comments recognized, make sure to go to the following link. That is streamelements.com/GSMCSportsNetwork./tip. Again, that really helps the show, makes the show more interactive between myself, the host, and you guys, the viewers. Again, that is streamelements.com/GSMCSportsNetwork./tip. And as always, it is displayed on the ticker on the bottom of the show segment down below. So with that being said, let's get right into what we are going to talk about for today. So we're going to start off the show by recapping last night's game, and then we'll get into the game before that. Last night's game between the Buccaneers and the Eagles. The Buccaneers dominated the Eagles 32-9. So we'll get into that. We'll talk about the Bills and their win over the Steelers, winning 31-17. We'll get into one of the games that I didn't recap from the weekend. The Chiefs and the Dolphins. We'll get into that in the third part of the show. And then the final part of the show, we'll look at the coaching carousel, because there's some things to talk about. Teams conducted interviews. We'll talk about Belichick. We'll talk about Harbaugh, where they could possibly end up. So we'll get into all that. But we'll start off with recapping the rest of the Super Wildcard Weekend games, starting off with the Eagles and the Buccaneers. So the Eagles, obviously, were struggling heading into this game. They started off the season 10-1, finished the regular season at 11-6. And, the Buccaneers, they ended up winning the division, although the last 2 weeks leading into the playoffs, it didn't look great. Baker Mayfield dealing with the rib and an ankle injury. They did win the division, but they, only defeated the Panthers 9-0. So I didn't feel great about them going into this game either. But the Buccaneers, they dominated this game. It was close for a little bit, but then the Bucs were able to pull away. The final score ended up being 32-9. So we'll go through the drive summaries really quick. So the Bucs, they got off to a good start. They went right down the field. They did kick a field goal. They went 12 plays, 65 yards on their first drive to make it 3-0. Chase McLaughlin hit a 28-yard field goal. Then the Eagles punted. Then the Bucs got a touchdown on their next drive. Baker Mayfield connecting with David Moore for a 44-yard touchdown. Bad tackling in this game by the Eagles defense. It was horrendous. Some of the worst tackling I think we've ever seen in a game. So the Bucs went up 10-0. Eagles punted, and then the Bucs another field goal by Chase McLaughlin, a 54-yarder. So that put them up 13-0. Then the Eagles kicked a field goal on their next drive. Jake Elliott hit a 47-yard field goal. That was set up by a 31-yard reception by Devontae Smith, who had a big game. Then the Bucs scored again. Chase McLaughlin kicked another field goal, and that was for 48 yards. And then the Eagles answered with a touchdown. That was set up by a 55-yard reception by 55-yard reception by Devontae Smith, and Dallas Goedert scored a touchdown from 5 yards out. Then on the extra point, there was a penalty, so then the Eagles did the tush push, and the tush push actually did not work yesterday, which I thought I'd never see the day. that was the case. But yeah, that ended up happening. I think it has been stopped before this year, but I think that was the first time I ever saw it like happen with me watching it. So they didn't get the 2-point conversion, so it stayed at 16-9. Bucks punted, and that was the end of the half. And then that was the last time the Eagles scored. Then to open up the second half, both teams exchanged punts. Eagles got the ball. So Gainwell had a 6-yard loss. Then Dallas Goedert had a 10-yard reception. And then Hurts got chased all the way back into the end zone. And there was an intentional grounding penalty because he threw it away in the end zone. And that caused a safety. So the Bucks got the ball back, and they scored a touchdown off of that. That was the second long touchdown. Trey Palmer, 56 yards. Again, terrible tackling. You could point at James Bradbury on, I think, both of those plays. He just, I don't know what he was doing. But the tackling in general was horrendous for the Eagles defense in this game. So that put the Bucks up 25-9. The Eagles turned it over on downs. The Bucks scored another touchdown. That was a 23-yard touchdown reception by Chris Godwin. And it was weird because I thought Baker was just throwing it up because he was about to get hit. And I thought it was going to be incomplete, and Godwin came down with it. And that was the final scoring play in the game. And then the Eagles turned it over on downs again. Bucks got it back. They turned it over on downs. And that was the end of the game. Bucks win 32-9. Looking at the stats for the game, Jalen Hurts went 25 of 35, 250 yards, 1 touchdown, no interceptions. DeAndre Swift had 10 rushes for 34 yards, 42 yards in total for the Eagles on the ground. And Swift, because I was looking at the stats yesterday, I went over it when we were talking about this game. He had 130 yards in the first meeting between these two teams. So they really just did not run the football. Which, again, I mean, they were down by a lot later in the game, but you thought maybe they would use that more, and they just didn't. Devontae Smith had a great game, 8 receptions for 148 yards. He showed out, was one of the few players that actually showed up for this game. I mean, obviously the Eagles were without A.J. Brown in this game. They were going to lean on Julio Jones more, and then he ended up getting hurt in the game. He was getting evaluated for a concussion. Dallas Goedert had a touchdown in the game. He actually got banged up at one point as well. But, the Eagles, they actually had 4 sacks in the game. But it really didn't matter. That back end, that secondary just was not good, giving up big plays. I mean, again, the tackling was horrendous. And then for Baker Mayfield, great game. 22 of 36, 337 yards, 3 touchdowns, no interceptions. Again, was sacked 4 times. The Bucks ran the ball for 119 yards in total. Rachaad White had 72 yards on the ground. Their leading receiver was actually Cade Otton. He had 8 receptions for 89 yards. David Moore had 2 receptions for 66 yards. Obviously, a big chunk of that was the 44-yard touchdown he had. Trey Palmer had the 56-yard touchdown. That was his only reception. Mike Evans had 3 for 48. Chris Godwin had 4 for 45 and a touchdown. The Bucks in this game had 3 sacks. Chase McLaughlin, obviously 3 for 3 with the extra points, 3 for 3 with field goals. But yeah, I mean, give the Bucks credit, man. They this was a different team. These two teams were heading in different directions. Obviously, I mean, I know the Bucks last 2 weeks weren't playing good, but on offense. But you know what? These teams were a lot different when they as compared to their Week 3 matchup. If you're the Eagles, I don't know where you go from here. And actually, big news when I woke up before the show. So Jason Kelce, you could tell he was very emotional, on the sidelines as this game was winding down. And it has come out that he informed his teammates that he is going to retire, which was something that's been speculated, for a while, especially this year. But now it's been made official. He's going to retire. So 13 seasons with the Eagles. Obviously, they won the Super Bowl against the Patriots back in the 2017-2018 season. 7-time Pro Bowler, 6-time first-team All-Pro, and one of the best offensive linemen, in the league. And that's a huge loss for the Eagles, because one of the things that made this team successful is their offensive line, and he's a big part of that. he's a big part of the tush push too, of course. And now with him leaving, that's a huge hole that the Eagles are going to have to fill. And you also got other veteran players that have been there for a long time, like Fletcher Cox and Brandon Graham. There's going to be changes for the Eagles, and I think when it comes to the coordinators, there definitely needs to be changes there. Nick Sirianni, I think the way this team collapsed towards the end, and the coaching candidates that are out there, Eagles might want to consider letting him go too, because the way this team was 10-1. And a lot of people kept saying they haven't played their best football yet. They're still making mistakes, but hey, at least they're winning. And once they played the 49ers, the wheels fell off. And, their only win came against the Giants in Philly, and that win wasn't pretty either. They had a collapse for the ages. And obviously it really didn't matter that they choked away the division, because look what happened with the Cowboys. So it's incredible what happened to this team. And they were banged up. They were obviously missing A.J. Brown, who actually didn't play his first game with the Eagles, because he's played pretty much in pretty much every game since the Eagles acquired him from last year. And this was the first game that he missed. And credit to Devontae Smith, because he was the only one that really showed up. He played really well, but it didn't really matter. The Eagles defense, they just couldn't tackle. The Eagles just really couldn't get anything going on offense. At one point this game was a 16-9 ball game, and you thought, okay, maybe the Eagles are gonna, come back and pull this one out, but that just did not happen. You got to look at there was a lot of things that went wrong with this team. And there definitely needs to be changes. They did change defensive coordinators during the year. They went to Matt Patricia, and it just got worse. The tackling, again, was horrendous. You thought there were, banana peels all over the field, because these guys just kept, missing tackles. It was ridiculous. I've never seen that. But I thought the Eagles still were going to find a way to win and at least get to the next round. But that was not the case. That was not the case here. They, the Buccaneers, from start to finish, looked like the better team. And it could have got even uglier early on, because Baker was really slinging it, and some of these guys just couldn't hold on to the ball. Cade Otton had a drop. Mike Evans dropped a touchdown. I think they still scored on that. That was the drive, the first touchdown drive, so they still ended up scoring on that. But that could have been costly for the Bucs early on, but it really did not matter. But congratulations to them. They will be playing the Lions now in Detroit on Sunday. And they obviously played them earlier on in the year. And that was before that game. That was when I came out with that video that said, are the Buccaneers legit? And since I made that video, then the Buccaneers trended down. Then they came back up, and they went down, and now they're back up with the playoff win over the Eagles. So congratulations to them. Congratulations to Baker Mayfield, because it's been a rough couple of years for him. And hopefully he has found a home here in Tampa. And they extend him. They make sure Mike Evans stays, because I know obviously they couldn't agree on a contract extension before the year started. So hopefully they can keep him, and they could continue to build this team around Baker Mayfield, and this could be his team moving forward. I really hope that's the case, because I want to continue to see him succeed there. Because again, it's been a rough couple of years, but look at the Browns and how they must feel. You got C.J. Stroud, on one side of the bracket. He was Deshaun Watson's replacement, and then you got Baker Mayfield in the NFC in the divisional round as well. So the Browns not looking so good right now. They don't feel very good seeing that. But that's pretty much it when talking about this. So let me know what you guys think about the game from last night. We're going to then move on when we come back from our first break of the show. we'll talk about the Bills win over the Steelers yesterday, 31-17. We'll talk about that when we come back from our first break. So, with that being said, stick around, and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. All right, and we are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And for the second part of the show, we are now going to talk about the Bills' playoff win over the Steelers, winning 31-17. Obviously, got moved to Monday because of all the snow that Buffalo got, and there was still a lot of it. They were able to clear off the field, but there was still. Sorry, I got like this piece of hair dangling off of my head, dangling in my face. But anyways, so yeah, they cleared the field, but the stands were still filled with snow. So in the game, every time the Bills scored a touchdown, you'd see the fans throwing up the snow in the air, which was kind of funny. But yeah, the Bills. I mean, I expected them to win this game, and that's exactly what happened. Although the Steelers did make it interesting. I mean, they were down 21-0 at one point. But they were able to get it within one score. It was 24-17 at one point. So I give the Steelers credit for at least making the game competitive, and they didn't just get blown out. Because when it was 21-0, you're like, yeah, this is gonna be like a 40-13 game or something. But that ended up not happening. So we'll go through the drive summary. So the Steelers got the ball first. They punted. The Bills went right down the field. 10 play. That's when you knew, okay, this is not gonna be good for the Steelers. They went 10 plays, 80 yards, 5.5 minutes of time of possession down the field. And Josh Allen connected with Dawson Knox for a 9-yard touchdown, so that put the Bills up 7-0. Then the Steelers punted, the Bills punted. Steelers on the first play of their drive, George Pickens caught a pass that ended up getting reviewed, that he did indeed fumble, so the Bills got the ball back. And literally one play, Josh Allen connected with Dalton Kincaid, the other tight end, the rookie tight end, for a 29-yard touchdown. So yeah, that put them up 14-0. Then the Steelers actually put together a nice. Well, first both teams punted, and then the Steelers were putting together a nice drive. Actually, it started off with a 33-yard reception by Pat Freiermuth. He fumbled, and I'm just really confused on that because the refs then said, yeah, he didn't end up fumbling the ball. I mean, he did fumble, but I guess because when he was out of bounds, it must have touched him, so they ended up getting the ball back, I guess. But it just doesn't. You look at the replay, it looks like it didn't even hit his helmet because they were zooming in on his helmet, that the ball hit his helmet. But I don't know. I honestly, that was not the right call, I don't think. So the Steelers, they kept the ball. And they got down the field. They got to the Bills 4, and then Mason Rudolph threw his first pick since taking over as the starter for the Steelers. Since he took over as a starter for the Steelers. That was intended for Deontay Johnson. And so that fumble really didn't even matter. So then the Bills, they ended up getting another touchdown, and that was from a 52-yard run by Josh Allen. Just nobody could tackle him on the Steelers. He just went right by him and took it to the house, and that put them up 21-0. Then the Steelers punted, and then the Steelers then blocked a field goal on the Bills' next drive, which then led to 7 points. Mason Rudolph connected with Deontay Johnson for a 10-yard touchdown. So the Steelers were down by 2 scores at the end of the half. Then the Bills punted to start the second half. The Steelers ended up kicking a field goal. Chris Boswell, that was a yard field goal, so that made it 21-10. Then the Bills kicked the field goal, so then it was 24-10. And then the Steelers went 12 plays, 75 yards, 6 minutes of time possession. Mason Rudolph connected with Calvin Austin for a 7-yard touchdown. So yeah, and then you thought, okay, here come the Steelers. And then the Bills, they got a touchdown, the final touchdown of the game. Josh Allen connected with Khalil Shakir for a 17-yard touchdown. That was on a 2nd and 9, and Minkah Fitzpatrick had Shakir. He was, you thought, oh, this is going to be a tackle, and it's going to be 3rd down. And Shakir was able to break it, and he ended up scoring on that. So talk about bad tackle. I mean, that was a bad tackling play. I mean, not as bad as the Eagles' effort, in the later game, but still, that was bad. So yeah, that put them up by 2 scores. The Steelers turned it over on downs. The Bills missed another field goal. The Steelers got the ball back, but it didn't really matter. That ended up being the end of the game. And yeah, the Bills move on. For the stats of the game, Mason Rudolph, he went 22 of 39, 229 yards, 2 touchdowns, 1 interception. The Steelers really didn't run the ball that effectively. I mean, also they were playing catch-up, but early on in the game, when the game was still close, they just really couldn't run it. The Bills did a nice job containing them, both running backs. So Jalen Warren had 38 yards on the ground. Najee Harris had 37. Pat Freiermuth was the leading receiver. He had 5 receptions for 76 yards. George Pickens had 5 for 50. Deontay Johnson 4 for 48 and touchdown. Calvin Austin also had a touchdown. And then as for the Bills, Josh Allen went 21 of 30, 203 yards, 3 touchdowns, no interceptions in this game. And they ran the ball for almost 200 yards. They had 179 yards on the ground. James Cook had 79. Josh Allen had 74 and a touchdown, the 52-yard touchdown run. And then Ty Johnson had 26 yards on the ground. Dalton Kincaid was the leading receiver. He had 3 receptions for 59 yards and a touchdown. Stephon Diggs, 7 for 52, so they kind of kept him in check. Deontay Hardy had a big reception in this game, a 34-yard reception. Khalil Shakir had 3 for 31 and a touchdown. And Dawson Knox only had the 9-yard touchdown reception. But yeah, I mean, for the Bills, yeah, they played a good game. Josh Allen, no turnovers in the game, which I thought there would be at least 1 interception. But no, he played a clean game. But, they did kind of take their foot off the gas pedal because the Steelers then all of a sudden they started slowly getting back into the game. And, yeah, it was a 1-score game at one point. But then they got, obviously, the Shakir touchdown. And yeah, they're moving on. And now they're going to be playing the Kansas City Chiefs next week. But this time it's going to be in Buffalo. So Patrick Mahomes is going to be playing his first road playoff game in his career, which is going to be interesting to see how that plays out. I'm really looking forward to that game. I mean, I expected this. I expected Josh Allen to turn the ball over. The game was close at one point, but it wasn't due to any turnovers. The Bills, when they were up 21-0, I just thought, the Steelers, there was really going to be no chance for them to come back. But again, I mean, they fought. They were able to, like I said, get it to within 1 score. But there was really never a moment where you thought, yeah, the Bills are going to, blow this game. Unless, again, Josh Allen turns it over, which he didn't. And they leaned on James Cook a little bit, which is something that, they should continue to do. If something's working, don't go away from it, he didn't have a monster game, but, the Bills as a team did run the ball very well, between him and Josh Allen. And, again, that's part of Josh Allen's game is being able to run the football. Now, again, I don't want him doing that. You don't want, myself and other people don't want him doing that a lot because you don't want to, him to end up like Cam Newton where you take too many hits and then it eventually, wears on you. That's something that they got to continue to do. And listen, it paid off. He got a 52-yard touchdown run, which was huge in the game. But really, the Bills were the better team here. And for the Steelers, there's some question marks. And in Mike Tomlin's press conference, somebody was asking him about, him having 1 year left on his contract, and he walked out. So that's something to keep an eye on, if he's coming back, Because now Mike Tomlin ends up leaving Pittsburgh. I mean, that's just the latest domino to fall. When we talk about the coaching carousel at the end of the show, um, yeah, it's just the Steelers. Yeah, they got some holes they gotta fill, and also the quarterback position too. Mason Rudolph did a nice job. Was able to help them get into the playoffs, but when you look at the quarterbacks that are left, Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, C.J. Stroud, Lamar Jackson, the Steelers, they don't have that. They don't have that, unfortunately. Kenny Pickett's another guy that I want to see do well. Also because we got the same first name, of course, but he might not be the guy. And if you're gonna contend in this conference, you need an elite quarterback, and the Steelers don't have that. We didn't see Joe Burrow in the playoffs this year because he was hurt. I mean, I did briefly mention, the Browns, but, Deshaun Watson, if he could turn back the clock and be the Deshaun Watson before everything, which I don't think is going to happen, there's another team. You look at the Colts with Anthony Richardson coming back and, what he was able to do before. I mean, he looked like he was going to be really good this year, and then he got hurt. So, I mean, well, I guess we'll pump the brakes with him because we got to see how he is next year. But, and I don't want to give up on Trevor Lawrence either. I think it was a combination of a lot of different things as to why the Jags, had their collapse. He was part of it, but also because he was hurt, So, but, you look at all these teams. A lot of these teams have, good quarterbacks that, can, and also the Chargers with Herbert as well. I forgot to throw him in there too. The Steelers don't have. It doesn't look like the Steelers have that, and they need to figure it out. There could be changes on the way. Maybe it's time to move off of Tomlin and go in a different direction. Give him a lot of credit for being able to, not finish with the losing record. My lights are flickering, I guess. That was weird. I give Tomlin a lot of credit for being able to. All right, there it goes again. Why are my lights flickering? Hopefully I don't lose. Hopefully we don't lose power, lose connection here. But yeah, I mean, I give Tomlin a lot of credit for being able to, finish with a winning record every time he's, every season he's been a coach for the Steelers. But other than the Super Bowl, which happened many years ago, the Steelers really haven't done much. And they actually haven't won a playoff game since 2016. And that was back when they, the Killer Bees were still around, and Alex Smith was playing quarterback for the Chiefs, and the Steelers won that game in Arrowhead. And I think Chris Boswell only kicked field goals. I don't think the Steelers scored a touchdown in that game. They won like 18-10, and Chris Boswell kicked like 6 field goals. That was the last time they won a playoff game. So I don't know. Maybe it's time for a change. But let me know what you guys think about this game from yesterday. We're going to take our second break of the show. But before I do that, I just want to remind you guys once again to tip or donate and get your comments recognized. Make sure to go to the following link. That is streamelements.com/GSMCSportsNetwork./tip. Again, that really helps the show, makes the show more interactive between myself, the host, and you guys, the viewers. Again, that is streamelements.com/GSMCSportsNetwork./tip. And as always, it is displayed on the ticker on the bottom of the show segment down below. So, when we come back from our second break of the show, we'll talk about the last wild card game, super wild card game that we did not get to, and that's from Saturday, the Chiefs and the Dolphins. The Chiefs winning 26-7. We'll get into that when we come back from our second break. So, with that being said, stick around, and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. All right, and we are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And for the third part of the show, we're now going to talk about the Chiefs-Dolphins game. The Chiefs getting a 26-7 win. There was really no point in this game where I thought the Chiefs weren't going to win. I mean, maybe when Tyreek Hill caught that touchdown in the game to make it 10-7, 53 yards from Tua Tagovailoa. But other than that, there really was no point where I was like, oh, the Chiefs are in trouble. They started off the game. They went 9 plays, 69 yards down the field. And Patrick Mahomes connected with Rashee Rice, who had a big game, for an 11-yard touchdown to make it 7-0. Both teams then punted. Tua then threw a pick, which led to a Harrison Butker field goal from 28 yards. So that made it 10-0. And yeah, then here we go. This is, where you could have said, okay, maybe the Dolphins have a shot. Tua connected with Tyreek Hill for 53 yards. So that made it 10-7. Then the Chiefs kicked another field goal. That was a 26-yarder by Butker. That was set up by a 28-yard scramble by Patrick Mahomes on 4th and 5. Then the Dolphins turned it over on downs. Both teams punted, exchanged punts, and then Harrison Butker kicked another field goal from 32 yards. That was set up by a 39-yard reception by Rashee Rice. So 16-7 at the half. Dolphins opened up the second half with a punt. Chiefs kicked another field goal. Harrison Butker, 21-yard field goal. And then a touchdown later in that quarter. And that was a 3-yard touchdown run by Isaiah Pacheco. And then nobody scored after that. The Dolphins turned it over on downs twice. And, the final score was 26-7. Obviously the weather was really cold. It was very cold there. So cold that Patrick Mahomes' helmet broke, on a collision with the Dolphins player. A piece of it fell off, so they had to give him a replacement helmet. And he said that helmet was frozen when he got it. So, it was really cold in Kansas City. And, looking at the stats of the game, 23 for 41 for Patrick Mahomes, 262 yards, 1 touchdown, no interceptions. Isaiah Pacheco, 24 carries for 89 yards and a touchdown. The Chiefs ran the ball for 147 yards in total. Mahomes had 41 yards, and Clyde Edwards-Helaire had 21 yards on the ground. Rashee Rice, like I said, had a big game, 8 receptions for 130 yards and a touchdown. Travis Kelce had 7 for 71. Clyde Edwards-Helaire actually had a fumble in this game. That was actually late in the game when the Chiefs were towards the end of the game. The Chiefs were just trying to run out the clock, and he fumbled. So the Dolphins did get one more possession, but they didn't do anything with it. The Chiefs had 2 sacks in this game. And then on the Dolphins side, Tua Tagovailoa went 20 of 39, 199 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 pick. Only ran the ball for 76 yards. They did get Mostert back and Waddle back for this game, but it really didn't matter. Tyreek Hill, of course, was their leading receiver. 5 receptions for 62 yards and a touchdown. Obviously, the 53-yard touchdown reception was a big chunk of those yards for him. Jalen Waddle had 2 for 31. And the Dolphins didn't have any sacks in this game. But yeah, it was a tall task for the Dolphins. I just really did not see them really winning this game, especially with the weather. And it's just and the Chiefs' defense. You know what? That's been the strength of this team this year. And they played well. They shut down the offense between that and the weather. And something on CBS's Instagram that they posted. So Dolphins by opponents this season. So they're versus playoff teams. Actually, no, versus all others. Okay, against non-playoff teams. 10-1, averaging 35.5 points per game, averaging 442.5 total yards per game, and then points per game differential plus 17.8. Then against playoff teams, they are 1-6. Averaging 16.1 points per game, total yards per game 316.9, and then points per game differential minus 15.7. And listen, we talked about it earlier how the Dolphins are kind of frauds, and again that just reared its ugly head once again here in this game. They just couldn't get anything going, and the other thing too is, similar to what I talked about with the Steelers and Kenny Pickett, what is holding the Dolphins back? Unfortunately, you got to say it's their quarterback. And Tua had a good year. I don't think he's now. When Tyreek Hill's not on the field, I mean, you saw in the Bills game, to the regular season finale. I mean, those interceptions, that interception at the end of the game was horrible. And you saw, when he got hurt in the Titans game, I mean, Tua looked like a different quarterback. He is what's holding them back. And you might have to move off of him and, maybe bring somebody else in. I don't know where you're going to get it from. Obviously, the other thing, too, is you got to have a replacement. If you don't have a replacement, then don't do it. But, when you look at, again, the quarterbacks that are left, the Dolphins don't have a quarterback like that, unfortunately. Now, I don't know. I mean, they're probably going to stick with Tua, of course, but, I just think that ultimately he's holding this team back from taking that next step. So I think at some point you're going to have to move off of him. But also, again, them playing against the Chiefs in that, in those elements, again, tall task. And they were missing a lot of guys on defense. I mean, they were missing, 4 of their linebackers. I don't think there was no Jerome Baker. There was no Van Ginkel who got hurt. Obviously, Jalen Phillips got hurt. Tore his Achilles. Bradley Chubb tearing his ACL. There was the Dolphins were dealing with a ton of injuries. I don't think there was any Xavier Howard in this game. A lot of injuries they were dealing with here. And you don't want to make excuses for them. I think even if all those guys played, I think the Chiefs are still winning. But that's why home field advantage is so important. And actually, I did see a TikTok, and it was Kurt Warner talking about how, if you're playing in, weather like this, it's advantage for one team. He's like, I want to see both teams, playing to their, basically saying he'd want to see them playing on like a neutral field. You're getting the best of both teams, and it's like that's the whole point of home field advantage. If you're complaining about that, well, the Dolphins, they should have won their final regular season game against the Bills. If you just win that game, you're not playing there. Pittsburgh is playing there, and you're hosting. I think they're hosting Buffalo again for the second week in a row. So you'd be at home, and they didn't do that. And you lost to the Titans. You don't lose if you don't choke away that 2-touchdown lead to the Titans, a few weeks ago. I think really about a month ago. You have the number 2 seed, but they didn't do that. They choked away the division, and now they're going home. They were an exciting team to watch. They put up 70 points against the Broncos earlier in the season. But ultimately, a lot of people saw that this team really just wasn't as good as they seemed to be because, you go up against Buffalo in Buffalo and you get blown out. You lose to Kansas City. You lose to the Eagles. When the Eagles, before the Eagles collapsed, you barely squeaked by Dallas, and we could talk about Dallas being frauds as well. There was a lot of fraudulent teams this year. We'll just put it like that. And then you lose to the Titans with the rookie quarterback. It's just the Dolphins. They showed you a lot of times this year that they really were not going to be that team that's gonna, be one of the last teams standing. And, again, they just would have won one more game. They would not have been playing in those conditions on Saturday. But unfortunately, that didn't happen. And as for the Chiefs, listen, the drops were still a problem in this game. Kelsey was dropping some balls in this game. But Rashee Rice had a big game, which is encouraging. It's the playoffs now, and the Chiefs are going to be different, I don't expect them to do a lot of those lollygagging plays where, like the fumble that happened on Christmas that ended up being a touchdown against the Raiders. this team come playoff time now, they know what's at stake. And I am really looking forward to these games next weekend, or this upcoming weekend. It is going to be they're going to be a lot of fun. Mahomes Allen is going to finish off the weekend, so I'm really looking forward to that, especially because it's going to be in Buffalo now, so it's going to be a change of scenery. And if you remember, in 2020, the COVID year, the regular season game they played in Buffalo, but of course there was no fans. Now you are going to have Bills Mafia in the stadium for this game, so it is going to be that game's going to be a lot of fun. So we'll see if we get another what was it 42 to 36 game. I don't think we're going to get that, but it should be a lot of fun, and especially because it's going to be Patrick Mahomes' first road playoff game. So I'm really excited for that. But you know what? And the key really is the Chiefs' defense, because this is the best defense that we've seen in the Patrick Mahomes era. And going into the game next week against the Bills, they're going to have to show out again, because now you're going up against Josh Allen and Stephon Diggs. That offense, you're going to have to find a way to slow them down, which, listen, they can. And Josh Allen played a turnover-free game against the Steelers, but that doesn't mean he's not going to do it. He's not going to have another one against the Chiefs. So we'll see. But the Chiefs did what they were supposed to do here in this game against the Dolphins. Again, the only time where you maybe thought, okay, Dolphins might have a shot is the Tyreek Hill touchdown. That was it. But they did what they're supposed to do, get a home victory, and now it's on to Buffalo. And then as for the Dolphins, we'll see where they go from here. Obviously, get your guys back for next year, especially on defense. I don't really see them, moving off of Tua here in the offseason, but who knows? But ultimately, he's one of the big reasons why this team is not going to be able to take the next level. Unfortunately, I don't want to say it, but that's the case. But and on top of that, the division's going to be better next year. Because if Aaron Rodgers is healthy next year, the Jets are going to be better. They're not better than the Dolphins, but they're going to be a better team. And we'll see. With the Patriots now, with Gerard Mayo as their new head coach, what they're able to do. They're in the middle of a transition period, but listen, this conference is loaded in general. Look at the conference as a whole. Where do you put the Dolphins? With these 4 teams that are left, the Texans, they're going to be a better team. They're just getting started. They got some work to do, the Dolphins, and starting with, they might have to figure something out with quarterback. But let me know what you guys think about this game. With that, we're going to take our final break of the show, and when we come back, we're going to talk about the coaching carousel. When we come back, teams have conducted interviews with people, with candidates. We'll talk about, where some of the big names could go, things like that when we come back from our final break of the show. So with that being said, stick around, and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. All right, and we are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And for the final part of the show, we are going to talk about the coaching carousel. I'll give you some coaching carousel updates as we wind down here, the final segment here. So obviously the big names out there are Mike Vrabel, Jim Harbaugh, and Bill Belichick. Now the Falcons they announced on their social media platforms that they finished their interview with Bill Belichick. So Belichick did visit the Falcons. Listen, I don't think that's a bad fit. You got a lot of young offensive pieces, on that team. Kyle Pitts, Drake London, Bijan Robinson, Tyler Algier, nice 1-2 combination there. The thing that they are missing is the quarterback. So it'll be interesting. And, obviously there's rumors out there that, the Falcons maybe could try to get Justin Fields from the Bears, because the Bears, they could use that number 1 overall pick on whatever quarterback they want if they choose to do that. So I don't think that's a bad spot for Belichick. Also, I heard there's mutual interest between the Chargers and Jim Harbaugh. And listen, that'd be a good fit for Harbaugh. Again, team that has a lot of offensive weapons. You got Justin Herbert, who is a franchise quarterback. You got to just fix up that defense, and that's something that Harbaugh can definitely do. So we'll have to see if that ends up happening. With the Cowboys, they haven't done anything yet with McCarthy, but I expect McCarthy to be gone. I think he should. I think him and Dan Quinn should both be gone after the performance they put on Saturday. On Sunday against the Packers. I just still cannot believe it. I mean, listen, don't get me wrong. That was enjoyable to watch, but I mean, the defense just falling apart and just I don't know what to say. With the Eagles, they just couldn't tackle. The Cowboys, they were just leaving people wide open. It just as a Giant fan, it was a good weekend. So we'll put it like that. But for the Cowboys, I mean, you got Harbaugh out there, you got Belichick, you got Vrabel. I mean, unless you could definitely get one of those guys, I mean, do you stick with McCarthy? But I feel like you're just not going anywhere with McCarthy. And people talk about, if they brought in a guy like Belichick, there could be a power struggle there. Because Belichick had a lot of control over the Patriots. I mean, he was basically the general manager, which is kind of one of the reasons why, there was the falling out in New England. Jerry Jones has a lot of control, and, seeing on social media, the only way Dallas is going to get back to their winning ways is if Jerry Jones, he takes a step back and he lets somebody else make the decisions, which I don't disagree with. But you know what? As a Giant fan, I hope that continues. I hope he continues to, make the decisions, and the Cowboys just continue to, go in the same circle they've been going in for pretty much my whole, for pretty much my entire life. That's the Cowboys that I've come to know, is just they get to the playoffs and they don't do anything. Listen, there are some very good coaching candidates out there that would be upgrades over Mike McCarthy. And actually, I want to see, has Mike Vrabel visited with anybody? I don't think he really. I don't think he has. Curious to see where he ends up too. Because for me, as a Giant fan, I'd take him. It's going to be interesting. The Chargers and the Falcons, I think, are they have the skill position players. The Chargers have a quarterback. The Falcons don't. I think if McCarthy gets fired, then you could put Dallas in there as a good destination to go to, because the talent that they have on this team is incredible. They just haven't been able to take the next step. But I think the Chargers, for me personally, out of those three teams, I think that's the best destination. I I don't know, because for me, I look at like the quarterback. I honestly would take Herbert over Dak. If everything is if the chips are aligned, I'd take Herbert. Because I think Herbert's ceiling is higher than Dak. Dak is what he is. Hasn't had postseason success. Now, I say that, but Herbert was a part of the 27-0 collapse. Now, that wasn't just on him. That's also on, Brandon Staley as well. I don't know. I feel like for Herbert, you could go if you could fix up that defense, and you bring back, all the pieces on offense. I don't know. I kind of like the Chargers' destination more than I would like Dallas. But again, Dallas would be up there if McCarthy gets fired, which I think he should be, because somebody's got to be held accountable for that performance. I mean, unless you just let go of Dan Quinn and bring in another defensive coordinator. But yeah, I don't know. I honestly would take the Chargers job. But that's just me. The Panthers. I don't know. I don't know if I'd want to go there with everything going on over there and just how the year went. Somebody's gonna have to take it. Somebody's gonna have to fix that. But there were teams that did conduct interviews. There's the defensive coordinator for the Ravens. He's been getting a lot of traction lately. Mike McDonald, the defensive coordinator for the Ravens. He's somebody that is a candidate that maybe a team would bring in. I don't know. For me, I feel like the way the game is now, I feel like you want to bring in, offensive guys. But we'll see what happens. I saw that Steve Wilkes, he also, he was interviewed by some teams as well. I mean, what he was able to do he should have been the Panthers head coach, this year. What he was able to do, when he took over for Matt Rule last year. He didn't really get a fair shot. So that was another one. We'll see. But I don't think there's been any. Again, I don't think there's been anything with Vrabel, but I don't know. And then you look at the Raiders too. I mean, are they going to end up keeping Antonio Pierce? Because if the Raiders don't, Max Crosby is going to request for a trade. And he's going to want, if they don't bring back Antonio Pierce. And you got all the players advocating for him to stay as the head coach. And he did a nice job. He really did a nice job, because if Josh McDaniels, stayed as the head coach, I mean, who knows what record this team would have ended up with. They were able to beat the Chiefs on the road with Antonio Pierce. I mean, they put up 60 points. Against the Chargers. I know the Chargers are kind of mailing it in to get rid of Brandon Staley, but that shows that you're playing for this coach if you're putting up 60 points. I feel like Antonio Pierce should. I think he's earned the right to stay as the head coach, but I don't know. Mark Davis might want to bring in a bigger name like Harbaugh. You still got Washington. That's another team that Belichick's been connected to. I'm hoping that Belichick doesn't end up in the NFC East. I'd rather him go somewhere else. But maybe it's the Falcons. Maybe it could be the Falcons. Listen, hey, you pulled off an improbable comeback against them in the Super Bowl. Maybe you're going to be the coach that brings them a Super Bowl. How about that? I would take that. But the problem is they need to figure out the quarterback situation, because their defense is solid too. But they need to get a quarterback in there. I don't think trading for Fields would be a bad idea. I mean, you'd put him in a good situation, and maybe they unlock something. But I don't know. It'll be interesting because it's not going to be Desmond Ridder. It's not going to be Taylor Heineke. Actually, I think it'd be insane if you had Harbaugh and Belichick just end up in the AFC West. So then you got those two to go along with Sean Payton and Andy Reid. I think that would be insane. If they all ended up there, which I don't think is going to happen, but you never know. Yeah, I don't know. It's gonna be interesting, and obviously something we'll keep an eye on. Within the coming weeks, of course. The hires will start happening. Dominoes will start falling there, and once that happens, we'll cover it. But for me, I'm advocating that Belichick and those guys, they just stay away from the teams in the NFC East, and because. Listen, if Sirianni and McCarthy are gone, I mean, the Eagles and the Cowboys are going to be attractive spots to go to. And one of those coaches could feel inclined to take the job if it's offered to them. But again, nothing's happened yet, at least I don't believe. We'll just have to wait and see. We will just have to wait and see. And I thought that, because my friend said something when I first woke up, and I thought, oh, did they let go of Sirianni? But it doesn't seem like that's the case. He's still the coach. So when if he ends up getting fired, we'll make sure to talk about it. We'll see. Nothing has happened yet. For the Cowboys and the Eagles, they definitely got to make some changes because how their seasons ended. I mean, the Cowboys, kind of just came up out of nowhere, getting blown out by the Packers at home. The Eagles, they've been trending down for a while now. Again, it was a good weekend. For me, it was a good weekend. So, like I said, if something happens, we'll make sure to we'll talk about it. But I hope you guys enjoyed the show for today. We are now moving on to the divisional round here in the playoffs. Excited for this weekend. I could just enjoy the playoffs now. I don't have to worry about the division rivals still in it. Whatever Super Bowl matchup we get, I'll be fine with. Obviously, prefer a good game. But there's really no team left in the playoffs that I dislike. So all these games, whoever wins. I mean, it's gonna stink for whoever loses this weekend. But I'm fine with whatever we end up with. Just as long as we end up with good games, I'm fine with that. But yeah, we're moving right along. And again, any updates, come with head coaching positions being filled, we'll make sure to talk about it on future shows, whether it's this week or within the coming weeks as well, because obviously that's mixed in now with all the playoff stuff. But yeah, Super Wildcard Weekend is over. It is now behind us. We are down now to, we're down to the final 8, and then that gets cut in half, and then you're down to 4 teams the following week. So, yeah. But that's pretty much it for the show for today. Again, thank you guys for watching. As always, I'm your host, Kenneth Gruenfelder, signing off from the GSMC Football Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. Have a good day, and I will talk to you guys tomorrow. Take care.